Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Streets and Eats. Today, we are going to be visiting with author Jo Manzanares. She wrote Secret Seattle, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure. And we're going to be learning about all those crazy places in Seattle that we never knew we needed to see. Welcome to Streets and Eats, the podcast where we want to inspire your next trip by telling you about some fantastic destinations and the best food to eat while you're there. Now remember, until the world opens completely back up and you feel safe to travel again, use this time to research and plan. That's what we're here for. In this episode, we're going to take you to one of our favorite cities, Seattle. And we'll be meeting up with Jo Manzanares, author of Secret Seattle, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our guest, Jo Manzanares. She is also for the Pacific Northwest. Well, and she was here before I was because we just moved here June of 2020. But she's been here her whole life, and therefore she was able to write this really cool book called Secret Seattle. And it tells you all these quirky little vignettes about all the sort of fun things, history, I don't know. What else, Mary Jo? I mean, it's got quite a bit in there.
Yeah, it's just all the stuff that you didn't know because you just didn't know it. We were taught things in school that, maybe not be completely accurate. Things have certainly been whitewashed or greenwashed. And the other thing is there's just a world of discovery. And when we live somewhere all of our lives, we tend only to see the things we've always seen, do the things we've always done. And so writing this book was a chance for my husband and I to constantly turn to one another and say, I didn't know that.
Well, that's great. And I was reading your story about it and how you were doing it during the pandemic, which must have added a nice little level of extra difficulty to it, I'm sure. But how did you come up with all these interesting things? I mean, did someone tell you, or did you have a list somewhere? Some of these things I would have never even thought to, look up.
Well, there's a format for the book. It's part of a series from Reedy Press, Secret Cities. So I had some great authors to take a look at what they had done and then try to see what I could find that represented Seattle. There's a style, obviously, and a format to follow, but in terms of the types of choices, those were left up to me.
And I see in your sources, it says site visit, site visit, site visit, site visit. So I'm assuming you were quite busy. Even the rest of us were all vegging out during the pandemic. You were off checking out these little places, huh?
We were, and a lot of them weren't open. And so because I was writing a book, I was very fortunate to be given access at a time when it wasn't open to the general public. So a lot of places were willing to let us in under limited conditions just to do a quick photo shoot and then get out. Fortunately, most, but not all of them are open now. And that's very exciting that now everyone can go and see those places.
Yeah, that worked out well.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of really off-the-wall places that you recommend in there. I'm just wondering if I could go back a little bit. Did you find a really good source for these things? Or are there places that you've just kind of learned about throughout the years that you've been in the area?
Well, Google is my friend, right. And for a lot of reasons. But, what you find is that once you start researching one topic, it's like going down a rabbit hole that takes you through all sorts of areas into things that you never thought. And before you know it, you have 5 or 6 ideas just from researching one concept. Now, not all of them work out to a story, but some of them work out for a little sidebar item or provide an entree into something that will work out for a vignette.
So which one was the most fun to research?
Well, all the ones that show Seattle, well, let's just say show Seattle's sketchy side. Just because we've always had this
Puritan.
This notion of our founding city fathers as being certain type of people, and there was a pretty sketchy side to all of it. The history is not as flattering to some of those men, because they were all men, white men, as they might have hoped. I mean, there certainly was a lot of abuse of the native tribes that they found here, predominantly the Duwamish. There certainly was some very difficult history with Chinese, predominantly Chinese labor, but other Asian laborers that came to work here. And you never really taught that in Washington State history, which I had, I think, in 6th or 7th grade. It's sort of glossed over. And I think, given today's times, it's really important to come to a better understanding of what really happened and how that fit into that era's history.
I think it is very timely for that reason. And I have to tell you, one of the reasons that Jim and I settled here, mainly because my daughter and our grandson live here, but on top of that, we've lived in Asia for a number of years, a total of, 9 years maybe or something. And so we really love Asian cultures, and we love being around. I think Seattle and Tacoma area is so rich in Asian culture that it just sort of makes us feel at home. We get to go out and have foods that we're used to eating. We just moved here from Tokyo, from the Tokyo area in June of 2020. So it's really fresh in our minds. And I'm glad that you're bringing some of that to light, and that now I think it is more celebrated anyway. I mean, there's some just wonderful places to go.
And it is. And our international district has expanded and grown to include so many of the other Asian countries. Originally, it was predominantly China, which is where it got its traditional Chinatown name. And it's greatly expanded with so many variations of dialects and countries represented, that it's just a dynamic place to be and a great place to go if you're hungry.
Absolutely. Right. We were just there a couple days ago.
We
but we didn't eat at Bruce Lee's favorite restaurant because we didn't have the book yet. What was that? Tai Fung, is it?
Tai Tung.
Tai Tung.
Tai Tung.
And did you get the chance to eat there?
Yeah, that's one that I knew about going back to college days, because at the time, I think it was open till 3 or 4 in the morning, which for a college student during late night cramming for exams with not very much money, it was a perfect spot to. We refer to it as, who's doing a Tai Tung run? And somebody would go down and pick up a big order to keep us tided over while we were doing our studying. So that one I did know about on my own.
Oh, okay.
I like the bit of history that you found on that one, where they had originally had the neon sign that said Chop Suey, and then that had to go away at one point, but now it's back.
That's a real difficult story, because I'm certainly not qualified to pass commentary on that. I've talked to people that are on both sides of the issue, as in terms of, yes, they feel it's a racist comment, no, that it's not. And so I just put it out there, and everyone's going to have to do their own research and decide where they come down on it, because there's certainly no agreement on it, but the sign is back.
Well, that's interesting that they would bring the sign back. Obviously they're okay with it. It's really cool. What's your favorite food there? Just because we will go.
Dumplings.
Dumplings.
I just love good dumplings.
That's right.
Yeah, we love dumplings too. We have a dumpling project that we've been working on over the years, because every country that you go to has their own dumplings. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to present those, and some of them we've even taken lessons on how to make, like the kinkale in Georgia, and then Ukrainian dumplings. And so we'll put those on our website. And it's just great to find a good dumpling place anywhere.
Well, it is. And I think people underestimate them. They think dumplings are all the same, but they're not. And I think they might seem the same until you have some really good ones. And then it's like, wow.
Exactly.
And I love the dumplings at Tai Tung.
Okay. Well, we'll try the dumplings when we go, because we haven't been there yet. We haven't actually done tons and tons of things in Seattle, because we've only lived here for, I guess, a year and a half.
Well,
and
yeah.
and
Things weren't open.
And things weren't
Yeah.
open, exactly. And plus with our grandbaby, we had to be super careful because he can't be vaccinated.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. So getting to Seattle as a destination, do you think that there's a lot of really cool places that people could hang out? How much time do you think Seattle takes to see?
As much time as you have. It's one of those, it's one of the places that for a first visit, stay downtown, hit all the recommended tourist spots. I mean, get a city pass and do the aquarium and see the museums and all that kind of stuff. And for a first time visit, or especially like someone who might be adding on a few days before or after a cruise, that's what I recommend doing. It's what I go do when I go to another city, is to get those things out of the way. If you have longer, then you get in a little deeper, do some of the things that maybe fit your particular interests, or things that are a little bit harder to get to. Maybe they're not quite in the city. You need to have a car, some of those kind of things. But for a first visit, do the basics and then add on based on how much time you have.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. We all
Yeah.
do that when we're traveling, right?
Yep.
And especially when there's cities, because there's so much to do in a city.
Well, there is. And I think, unfortunately, that sometimes the major attractions get a bad rap because it's like, oh, it's too touristy. Well, what's wrong with being a tourist? I mean, there are several times that, we get a hotel in the city and go do all of those basic things because there's a reason they're so popular. They are special. And while I don't want to do them every time I visit the city, do them once and then add on.
I 100%
I
agree with that. So living in Washington State as long as you have, what are some of your favorite places that you go to hang out, to just feel better, to get out of the house? Because that's what traveling is to me. It's sort of an escape, right? So
yeah,
where do you escape to?
It's really hard because outside my office window here, it is just pouring down rain.
I know.
I mean, it is.
The weather's been atrocious lately.
It is sideways rain, and honestly, this is the time of year where the thought of slogging somewhere in this kind of weather is depressing somewhat. But yet, when I get out and do things, then it's so enjoyable that I wonder why I don't do it more often. So it is kind of a double-edged sword. I always like going to the Pike Place Market. Because I shop there.
Really? As a general rule?
Well, no, because I don't live in the city. But when we go into the city, we go to the market to buy whatever we need and take home, and it'll last us for as long as it does. We get a hotel in the city probably, up until 2020, 5 or 6 times a year. We go to the market, we get our wine, we get all sorts of snacks for the room, and so we've just developed our favorite spots to stop and get flowers and food and wine, and we do that regular. So I don't see that as a tourist kind of thing. I'd see that as, let's go shopping at the market. And it's always fun. There's always just sort of a vibrancy that goes on there. The other place I really like is the Seattle Art Museum. And they've got a nice assortment of permanent and rotating exhibits. It's easy to get to from the market, so those two often go hand in hand. If we're staying close by the market, we'll probably manage to do one or the other of those both days. And so that's always a treat. If I want to go shopping in the International District, I always hit up Wajimaya because there are so many things I never knew I had to have there.
That's right.
And we walked through it going, oh my gosh, we missed this so much.
That's worth a good hour or two of your afternoon anyway, just to walk around Wajimaya.
Right. And because it's sort of like, I need that. And I had no idea. So that is always fun. And I'm thinking indoor places now because it's winter time. During the summer and the outdoor weather, Gasworks Park is just delightful.
It is a gorgeous place.
So much room. You can walk, you can hike, you can take a picnic. You can go out to the water and look at the houseboats across the way. or we call them floating homes now. Sorry. So that's a real treat.
I think Gaslight Park is great for Instagram. People want to go take their Instagram pictures, and for portraits. I did a whole photo portrait shoot there, and it's just fantastic backdrops.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't beat them.
Gorgeous there.
Yeah, it really is.
And one of the places that we're really excited about getting back to now that things are opening up again was someplace that we didn't know about, and that's the Pinball Museum, which is in the International.
We saw that. That is on our list now too.
Yeah, yes. They kindly and graciously opened up so that we could take a quick look and get some photos. Did a brief interview with them. They're a lovely couple. They actually live very close to us.
Oh, really?
From home, but we weren't able to actually get in and play. And so now it's like, there's some stuff that goes way back. So we're going to try to figure out a time. And we're doing some remodeling in the basement. We're trying to figure out, there just might be a pinball in our future.
Yeah, I see. You're from that pinball.
Well, you did mention that they can give you information on where to find pinball machines and restoration, stuff like that.
Yeah, they can help make that purchase, and I think that's we're not quite there yet. We're probably a couple months from that, but we've noticed a couple corners that might be perfect for a pinball machine.
I think that sounds
we're looking at a new house ourselves, and it's got a nice big basement, so that could be on our shopping list too.
Yeah, and one of the other places I recommend for people visiting here is wine tasting. Yeah, the grapes predominantly grow on the eastern part of the state, although there is some grown up in Whidbey Island area. But find a tasting room here, go taste some Washington wine and get to know, a little bit about the grapes that we're known for. You can do that. There's some places in the Pioneer Square area, or you can get out to Woodinville, and there's, 100 and some wineries and tasting rooms out there. So those would be some of the highlights I'd recommend.
Oh, that sounds like fun. We haven't done that either.
And there is, since we don't live too far apart, there is a little local winery that has estate grapes here in Federal Way, just a few miles from where we live. And it's been here for, 10 or 15 years. We've been here much longer than that. We had no idea it was down there until after the book went to press. So we'll be hitting that up again.
How fun. Jim loves to go wine tasting. See, we
lived
in Europe for so many years that wine tasting was something that you did as a general, of course. I mean, no matter where you were, here's a winery to try or a brewery to try.
Well, I'll send you the information. Maybe we can meet there for some wine tasting.
That would be fun. We should definitely do that. Yeah. Well, what else can you tell us about, how you enjoyed researching the book, or maybe something else that you found surprising?
What I really appreciated were the people who were willing to help share information that I'm guessing often get overlooked. A restroom attendant, a janitor, a bellman. Everybody has stories to share. It's just a matter of tapping in and asking them. And they were, fountains of information that led me off in a variety of directions. And I think that's just good information for all of us, no matter where we're traveling. We can get information from, people beside the front desk or the concierge. And that's not to minimize. They provide a very, very valuable and important service. But it's always helpful to get information from someone who I think of as being kind of just like me, just an average kind of person looking for a diner or for something that, something that's just casual.
Well, that's one of Jim's and my big things is always talk to really everyone to get their recommendations, because especially when you're overseas, it may not be so hard in the United States because we speak English and we understand, since we live here, which reviews to look at and maybe how to read them, kind of get the nuances of them and stuff like that. But when you're overseas in a foreign country, you may not be looking at the right app, or you might not know the language well enough, or Google Translate hasn't translated it quite well enough.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing to do is ask locals, where would you go? And I actually shy away from concierges at the hotel desk, because a lot of times they've been told, tell them to go here, and they don't really
have a
want to give you
pre-existing
their
relationship.
they don't want to really give you their own opinion.
Well, and a great concierge is worth their weight in gold, because they will give you that honest answer about what you're looking for. But so many seem to be, I don't know if it's a matter of staffing or they're just not hiring the expert, but they have a list of a handful of places, and that tends to be where they steer people. So you really have to know who you're asking, and have a realistic expectation of what you're getting for an answer.
And have established a little rapport maybe ahead of time, so they know they can be honest without there being any.
Well, because sometimes I want that fancy schmancy, steakhouse dinner, and sometimes I'm in my sweats and a t-shirt, and I just want to grab something on the run.
Yeah, I just like to know where people want to go themselves, because that tells me that that's going to be a hidden gem, maybe.
That's usually how we open up the conversation. Well, where would you go on a Saturday afternoon for lunch, or a Friday night? So that way, and from as many different people as you can throughout the area where you're at.
Well, and everyone's going to have a different answer. I mean, heck, my husband and I have a different answer to that question.
That's right.
So that you have to flip a coin.
That's right.
Yeah,
I agree with that. So if you're coming to Seattle and it's November and it's raining cats and dogs, other than the Air Museum and Pike Street Market, which is indoors, where else can we go and have some fun?
Well, my favorite rainy day activities, perhaps because I live here, are pretty basic. It's wine tasting. It is all the museums. I try to do them, on a cycle every winter, because they're except for last year. But generally, we'll just say everything. When I say usually, means not 2020.
Skip that year.
Yeah, it just didn't happen.
Forgotten year. That's right.
Do all the museums, both Seattle and Tacoma, on a cycle throughout the winter. I will sometimes do the zoo in the winter, just because it's a little different pace. If it's really pouring down rain, then no. But if it's just kind of cold and Seattle misty, both the Woodland Park Zoo and the Point Defiance Zoo can be great. The aquarium, I try to do that once a year as well. Poking along the waterfront, Seattle waterfront, is always fun. You can be outside if it's a little bit drier, and pop in if it gets a little bit wetter. But those are, I guess, because I live here, those are the things I tend to do during the rainy season.
And what about when spring comes along? Where are you aching to go and get outside and
where are the best flowers?
Where are the best? Well,
I mean, we know the university has beautiful cherry blossoms. So
beautiful, and the Arboretum, the Rose Garden at the at Woodland Park Zoo is great. And part of the reason it's so great is because they use Zoodoo, which we talked about in the book. The Ballard Locks is a great place during the summer.
Yeah.
It was closed this past year, but the Fish Flatter, I think the biggest run is probably going to be late July, early August, if I remember correctly. And that's a fun place to get and take a picnic. All the boats going through the locks, it's just and it's free. I'm used to looking at larger locks where people spend a lot of money to take their boat through, and because it's free, we have a lot more traffic than one might think. So those are places that I would go because I wanted to just be outside. I didn't necessarily want to do anything specific, just I wanted to enjoy being outdoors. Kubota Gardens, which is in the south part of Seattle, is great. We have a couple of rail trails along Lake Washington. The Burke Gilman Trail starts in well, I grew up calling it Golden Gardens, but kind of starts in the water there in Ballard and actually goes through all the way up to Bothell with a brief missing link is what they call it, a brief area that's not officially a trail that they now are going to finish. That's a great walk if you've got a lot of ambition, or maybe you just want to walk and stop off for a beverage and something to eat and call it a day. So those are all great warmer weather, drier weather activities.
That sounds like fun. I don't think we've done any of that really. We've done the locks.
Kubota Gardens is just a gem, and so many people don't realize that it's here because it's south of the city, and sometimes people only think of downtown. It also has an incredible history of the family who was interned during the Japanese roundup in World War II. And it's an incredible story of family and perseverance, and it's now run by a foundation.
Oh, how fantastic. I love that kind of thing.
Well, you did mention one of my favorite things, which is food. Are there any places that you find yourself going back to fairly regularly for food, for eating?
Yeah, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you have your favorite waiter and everything, but it's also a bad thing because you sometimes forget to try new places.
That's right.
So seeing this, it's like I realized, but there's so many places I'm missing. For a steakhouse dinner, we're partial to El Gaucho and Dano's Broiler. Those are, those two are go-to places when we're doing a steak dinner or taking someone out for a nice meal. I do like Tai Tung in the International District. I've already said that.
How about seafood? Seattle's known for its seafood.
Seafood. Well, I like Ivar's down on the waterfront. Ivor Hagelin was a colorful chap, and I'm not sure if all of the stories about him or spun about him are true or not, but they are at least enough grounded in fact that they keep getting repeated for decades. And he was a colorful restaurateur and a big Seattle, supporter. That was the place my parents took us for our 12th birthday special. You're going to be a teenager soon dinner, and so going back there, especially to the one on the waterfront, is always a treat. He's got fast food walk-up bars and other restaurants around the city, but the one on the water is still my favorite. For a view, also down, if you're down by the market, I like Cutter's, which is just at one end of the Pike Place Market there. It's easy to just go in and sit in the bar and have a drink and some appetizers and call it a nice Seattle day, especially if there's a nice view out on the water. So those are just, those would be the ones that we go to over and over without thinking. And there's also a Italian restaurant that we recently discovered thanks to the recommendation of friends called Machiavelli. And that's a new favorite spot for us. We've gone a couple of times, and small family owned, and they have a great menu and wine list. Easy to get to on Capitol Hill. They don't take reservations, so that's the downside. You don't want to go in the cold weather because you'll find yourself standing outside. But we've gone before the weather turned, and it's really a delightful, small, cozy kind of place that we really like.
Well, I'm not sure about the listeners, but I've got a big list now of things I need to try.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, we're neighbors, so anytime you want to go, just shoot me an email.
I'll do that.
But you're right. It is. You do feel kind of not bad, but like you might be missing out on something when you do go back to places that you really like, because Seattle is full of so many great restaurants. But it's always good to get a local's idea. and recommendations.
And, when things started opening up again, we said that, every week we were going to go someplace, whether it was for lunch or, cocktails or dinner or whatever, because we really wanted to support those restaurateurs that were surviving and were struggling to survive. We then just fell into going to the same old places again, and we need to, we're starting this up again next week. We're going to go to Duke's up on Elkai in West Seattle, and they have Monday night is half price wine. So that was we're gonna go up there. We're hopefully it won't be too nasty of weather. We're gonna walk the waterfront and then have an early dinner and bottle of wine.
That sounds like
a perfect nice Monday night.
Perfect any night.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think, that about sums it up. We have a lot to do. We're in Seattle. We're definitely not experts on it like you are. We're just now discovering our new state, and we're enjoying it. I'm glad that things are opening up so we can get out more. Makes a huge difference. And like Jim said, we're buying a house. So I guess we're going to stay.
Yeah. Or at least for a while.
At least for
That's
a
right.
while. Yeah.
We'll be sure and use your secret places in Seattle for exploring. I don't know if I'll go to the gum wall.
That's a really popular place, actually.
But
that
it is
I knew
very
about
popular.
before.
It is. And I have heard about it for years and years and years. I had never been there. I never wanted to go there.
Right?
It just disgusted me. But for the book, it's like, okay, I've got to get down there and take a picture. And yuck. Just yuck. But it's packed. I mean, people are down there having their prom pictures or their wedding pictures. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. But if you did decide that you liked it after all, and you go to Prague, there's also one there. So you might.
That's right.
And we were in San Luis Obispo just a couple of months ago. They have one there.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
I don't really get it, but it's not my.
Yeah, the Seattle one is the second germiest site in the world. It's right behind the Blarney Stone. So.
Oh yeah.
Yuck. The Blarney Stone. I did kiss the stone, and then I read that it was the germiest place, but it was well before the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm not a germphobe, but still, yuck.
Yeah, yuck. Okay, well, Mary Jo, where can the listeners find you if they want to? Well, first of all, I mean, they can get your book on Amazon. That's not a problem. But as we did, and you're welcome. And but other than that, where can people find you?
I have my travel blog, which is travelingwithmj.com. All my social media spins from there, and you can find the book and more information about the book at secretseattlebook.com.
And we'll make sure we include all those links in our show notes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I guess that's going to do it for this episode of Streets and Eats. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. All right, well, that wraps up another episode. Thanks for joining us here at Streets and Eats, where we want to encourage you to savor the adventure. We'd love for you to come to our website, Roving Veils, or our sister site, Reflections en Route, and sign up for our newsletters. That way you'll never miss a podcast or a blog post. And join us on Facebook in our private Facebook group, Streets and Eats, where we talk all things travel, get advice from fellow travelers, answer questions, and just have a great conversation. Thanks for listening, and
ciao for now.